Snap! The Tholian student's fragile bones shattered like dry kindling in Eugene's hand as he gripped it just a bit too firmly in what was intended as a friendly handshake. The alien's scream echoed through the Galactic Academy's majestic halls, drawing shocked gasps and looks of pure horror from the surrounding extraterrestrial students and faculty. This was humanity's chance. Eugene Coleman, the first and only human to attend the prestigious alien-dominated school, now bore the weight of his entire species' reputation on his shoulders. Every action, every word, would either prove humanity's worth to the skeptical alien masses or condemn his kind to be forever seen as nothing more than primitive, uncultured brutes. The accidental injury sent shockwaves rippling through the academy on that fateful first day. Whispers quickly spread, mixed with awe and fear, at the raw strength and durability the human possessed, compared to his frail Tholian classmates. Some saw potential, others only the threat of a dangerous interloper in their midst. But Eugene was determined to show them the true scope of human capability. In class after class, he effortlessly solved the most complex equations, demonstrating mental acuity and problem-solving skills that left both his alien peers and instructors astounded. One faculty member in particular, the renowned Tholian scientist Professor Antares, found his fascination with the extraordinary human student growing each day. Yet for all his intellectual triumphs, Eugene still struggled to find acceptance. The vast cultural divide, coupled with the aliens' varying reactions to his presence, left him isolated. Some regarded him with reverence, others with bitter resentment and abject terror of what a human was truly capable of. It all came to a head in the combat training simulator. Eugene, alone, decimated an elite team of Tholian warriors, his lightning reflexes, uncanny adaptability, and raw combat prowess, leaving the once smug aliens utterly humiliated in defeat. The human had single-handedly proven himself a one-man army. But Professor Antares knew something the students did not. Hidden deep in ancient Tholian records were tales of a long-buried conflict with humanity, a war in which the technologically superior Tholians suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the indomitable human spirit. Should this history come to light, Antares feared the already simmering tensions could boil over into full-blown anti-human hysteria. Now, even as he battles to earn his place and uncover the reasons behind humanity's long absence from the stars, Eugene remains unaware that his every action is being scrutinized, dissected, and judged. For in the eyes of many at this school, he is the face of humanity, and his performance may well decide the fate of his entire species in the galactic community. No pressure, right? As the weeks passed, Eugene found himself excelling in every challenge the Galactic Academy threw his way. In the zero-gravity training course, he weaved through the floating obstacles with a grace that left his Tholian classmates slack-jawed. His mind seemed to calculate trajectories and angles on the fly, allowing him to effortlessly navigate the complex course and set new records that left even the instructors impressed. Professor Antares watched from the observation deck, his interest in the human growing with each display of Eugene's prowess. He began to secretly collect data on Eugene's performance, comparing it to the Tholian standards he had spent decades studying. As he pored over the results, Antares discovered something remarkable. Eugene's brain structure and neural pathways were significantly more advanced than those of his Tholian peers. It was as if the human's mind was hardwired for faster processing and problem-solving, allowing him to adapt and excel in ways that left Antares both awed and unsettled. As Eugene's reputation grew, whispers began to circulate among the students. Some spoke of his achievements with grudging respect, while others regarded him with suspicion and fear. It was during this time that Eugene first encountered Zoran, a mysterious Tholian student who seemed to take a particular interest in him. "You're making quite the name for yourself, human," Zoran said, his voice imbued with a hint of menace. "But I wonder if you truly understand the implications of your presence here." Eugene eyed him warily. "What do you mean?" Zoran leaned in closer, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the Academy's artificial light. There are those who believe that humans like you pose a threat to the stability of our galaxy. The Preservers, they call themselves. And they will stop at nothing to ensure that your kind is contained or eliminated. Eugene felt a chill run down his spine at Zoran's words, but he refused to be intimidated. I'm here to learn and prove my worth, just like everyone else. I won't be bullied by some shadowy group with a grudge against my species. Zoran shrugged, a strange clicking sound emanating from his joints. Suit yourself, human, but don't say I didn't warn you. As Zoran walked away, Eugene couldn't shake the feeling that he had just brushed up against something dangerous, but he was determined to focus on his studies and prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. However, as the weeks turned into months, Eugene began to notice a pattern of strange occurrences. Equipment malfunctioned during his training exercises, his test scores were mysteriously altered, and whispers of sabotage followed him like a dark cloud. It didn't take long for him to realize that the Preservers Zoran had mentioned were not just a threat, but a reality. They had infiltrated the Academy's administration and were actively working to discredit him and undermine humanity's progress. The true test came during the interspecies diplomacy simulation. Eugene's team, comprised of representatives from various alien races, was tasked with negotiating a peace treaty between two warring factions. As the negotiations began, Eugene found himself the target of subtle manipulation and misinformation from certain members of the opposing team. He quickly realized that the Preservers were attempting to sabotage the talks and paint humanity as an untrustworthy and belligerent species. But Eugene was not one to back down from a challenge. Drawing upon his innate understanding of strategy and his uncanny ability to read and manipulate emotions, he began to turn the tide of the negotiations. He exposed the Preservers' tactics and appealed to the common goals and desires of both factions, expertly navigating the complex web of alien politics and psychology. In the end, against adversity, Eugene's team emerged victorious, brokering a successful peace agreement that left even the most skeptical observers impressed. The Academy's leadership commended him for his exceptional performance, and for a moment, it seemed as though humanity's place in the galactic community was secure. But Professor Antares knew better. He had been observing the Preservers' movements and had grown increasingly concerned about the threat they posed, not just to Eugene, but to the future of humanity itself. In a clandestine meeting, he revealed his findings to Eugene, sharing the shocking truth about the humans' advanced cognitive abilities and the implications they held for the galaxy at large. Together, they began to unravel a conspiracy that stretched back centuries, a web of secrets and lies that had kept humanity in the shadows for far too long. Eugene realized that his success at the Academy was more than just a personal triumph. It was a crucial step in securing humanity's place among the stars and unraveling the Preservers' insidious plot. As tensions rose and the Preservers grew more brazen in their efforts to undermine him, Eugene found himself at the center of a dangerous game of cat and mouse. He navigated treacherous alliances, outmaneuvered hidden agendas, and fought to protect not just himself, but the future of his entire species. And with each passing day, the stakes grew higher. For Eugene knew that the Preservers would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on the galaxy, and that his failure could spell the end of humanity's hopes for a place among the stars. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but Eugene was determined to see it through, no matter the consequences. 891. Eugene's fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, his eyes darting between multiple screens as he bypassed layer after layer of security protocols. The restricted archives of the Galactic Academy lay before him, a treasure trove of secrets waiting to be unveiled. Come on, he muttered under his breath, sweat beading on his forehead as he raced against time. One wrong move and the entire system would lock down, alerting security to his presence. With a final keystroke, the last firewall crumbled. Eugene let out a triumphant breath as classified files flooded his screen. His eyes widened as he absorbed the information. Ancient conflicts between humans and Tholians, battles won against impossible odds, and the subsequent systematic erasure of human achievements from galactic records. But the rabbit hole went deeper. Eugene uncovered evidence of the Preservers' far-reaching influence, their tendrils extending into the highest echelons of galactic power. Governments, corporations, even the Academy itself, all were puppets dancing to the Preserver's tune. "This can't be real," Eugene whispered, his palms sweating from the implications. A ping from his communicator startled him. It was Professor Antares. "Eugene, meet me in Lab 7. Bring what you found." In the lab, Eugene found Antares with a small group of aliens, a centaurian with 4 arms, a serpentine slisk, and a towering Cronin. The professor introduced them as trusted allies against the Preservers. "We need to act fast," Antares said, his crystalline form vibrating with urgency. "The Preservers have a hidden base within the Academy. We must infiltrate it and gather concrete evidence of their experiments." As they planned their covert operation, chaos erupted across the Academy. Alarms blared, and security forces swarmed the corridors. Eugene's comm unit buzzed with an official summons. He was being called in for questioning regarding a series of sabotage incidents. "They're trying to frame me," Eugene realized, his fists clenching. Zoran and his Preserver cronies are making their move. Forced to split their focus, Eugene faced the disciplinary board while his allies continued preparations. He stood tall before the stern faces of the Academy leadership, their accusations falling like hammer blows. "Mr. Coleman, how do you explain your presence in restricted areas during each incident?" The lead investigator's voice dripped with suspicion. Eugene's mind raced, carefully crafting responses that revealed nothing while maintaining his innocence. It was a delicate dance, one misstep away from disaster. Days later, with the investigation still looming over him, Eugene and his team put their plan into action. Under cover of night, they slipped through the Academy's winding corridors, Eugene's enhanced senses guiding them past patrols and security measures. They reached a nondescript wall, unremarkable save for the faintest shimmer betraying a hidden entrance. Eugene placed his palm against it, concentrating. The wall rippled and parted, revealing a sleek, high-tech facility, the Preserver base. Inside, they moved swiftly, downloading data and collecting physical evidence of the Preserver's experiments. Eugene's stomach turned as he saw the results of their work. Genetic manipulation, neural tampering, all designed to suppress the potential of humans and other species. Suddenly, alarms shrieked to life. "Intruder alert! Sector 7! "Time's up," Eugene growled. "Move!" They sprinted for the exit, but a squad of heavily armed Preservers led by Zoran blocked their path. Eugene locked eyes with his Tholian nemesis, tension crackling between them. "So the human thinks he can play hero," Zoran sneered, raising a weapon. "This ends now." The air erupted in a storm of energy blasts and flying debris. Eugene's team scattered, using their varied abilities to hold off the Preserver forces. Eugene himself became a blur of motion, his enhanced strength and speed allowing him to close the distance to Zoran. The two clashed in a furious exchange of blows, Eugene's raw power against Zoran's Tholian battle techniques. They traded strikes that would have shattered normal beings, neither willing to yield. With a roar of effort, Eugene feinted left, then dropped low, sweeping Zoran's legs from under him. As the Tholian fell, Eugene delivered a precise strike to a weak point in his exoskeleton. Zoran collapsed, unconscious. "Let's go!" Eugene shouted to his team. They fought their way out, the precious evidence of the Preserver's conspiracy clutched tightly in their grasp. As they regrouped in a secret location, Eugene stared at the data they'd stolen. The truth about humanity's potential and the Preserver's centuries-long deception lay within. But how could they reveal it to a galaxy that had been manipulated for so long? Eugene looked at his allies, alien and human alike, and saw persistence in their eyes. They had struck the first blow against the Preservers, but the real battle was just beginning. The fate of humanity and the future of the galaxy now rested on their shoulders. Shoulders. Eugene tapped a few keys on his wrist-mounted computer, sending the evidence to every news outlet and government agency across the galaxy. "It's done," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The response was immediate. Comms channels exploded with chatter. News feeds blared urgent updates. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of billions of shocked reactions. "We did it," Antares said, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. "The truth is out there." But their victory was short-lived. Within hours, reports of violence began to trickle in. A Centaurian diplomat, known for her pro-human stance, was found dead in her quarters. An explosion rocked a human cultural center on Proxima Centauri 3. Eugene's comm unit buzzed. It was the Cronin ally from their team. "Eugene, it's the Preservers. They're striking back hard." Before Eugene could respond, an alert flashed across his screen. The Galactic Council was convening an emergency session to address the crisis. He and Antares were summoned to present their evidence. The council chambers were a cacophony of angry voices and frantic movement when they arrived. Eugene felt the weight of countless alien eyes upon him as he took his place at the podium. "Honorable representatives," he began, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "What I'm about to show you will change everything you thought you knew about galactic history." As Eugene laid out the evidence, gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. But something felt off. He noticed subtle glances between certain council members, hands moving to hidden pockets. Antares must have sensed it too. The Tholian professor subtly tapped a command into his datapad. Suddenly alarms blared. Security shutters slammed down over every exit. "Lockdown initiated," a computerized voice announced. Chaos erupted. Several council members leapt to their feet, weapons appearing in their hands. Eugene dove for cover as energy blasts scorched the air above him. "Preserver agents!" Antares shouted, ducking behind an overturned desk. Eugene's mind raced, assessing the situation. The Council's advanced defense systems were all around them, waiting to be used. "Antares," he called out, "can you access the environmental controls?" The Tholian's eyes lit up with understanding. He furiously tapped at his datapad. Moments later, the gravity in the chamber fluctuated wildly. The Preserver agents, caught off guard, floated helplessly in the air. Eugene pushed off from his cover, using his enhanced strength to propel himself through the zero-G environment. He methodically incapacitated the floating infiltrators, his combat training paying off. But one agent remained. Zoran materialized from behind a holographic projector, a hostage in his crystalline grip. "It's over, Eugene," the Tholian growled. "Stand down, or this counselor dies." Eugene locked eyes with his nemesis, mind working furiously. He noticed a faint shimmer in the air behind Zoran, the council's hollow emitters. With lightning speed, Eugene tapped a command into his wrist computer. A massive, terrifying alien monster sprang to life behind Zoran, roaring with holographic fury. The Tholian flinched, his grip on the hostage loosening just enough. Eugene launched himself forward, tackling Zoran to the ground. They grappled fiercely, but Eugene's raw strength won out. He pinned Zoran, the Tholian's exoskeleton creaking under the pressure. "Yield," Eugene demanded. Zoran's eyes flashed with hatred, but he nodded in defeat. As the lockdown lifted and security forces flooded in, Eugene helped the shaken council members to their feet. He and Antares spent the next several hours presenting their full findings, leaving no doubt about the Preserver's crimes. The council's vote was unanimous. Humanity would take its place among the galactic community with full rights and privileges. In the days that followed, Eugene found himself thrust into the spotlight. He addressed crowds of cheering humans and curious aliens alike, but he knew the real work was just beginning. "We've won a battle," he told Antares as they prepared for yet another diplomatic meeting, "but we've got a long way to go to win the peace." The Tholian professor nodded sagely. "Indeed. But if anyone can bridge the divide between humans and aliens, it's you, Eugene." Eugene squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was watching, and he was. Eugene's fingers danced across the holographic interface, sifting through countless files in the galactic archives. Sweat beaded on his brow as he pored over ancient texts and fragmented data streams. Beside him, Antares' crystalline form pulsed with an urgent blue light. "Eugene, look at this," Antares said, his voice tinged with awe and fear. On the screen before them, a series of images flickered to life. Impossibly old star charts, recordings of long-dead civilizations, and fragments of a language so complex it defied translation. The Vilcari, Eugene breathed, his eyes widening as he absorbed the information. They've been here all along, pulling the strings from the shadows. Their covert investigation led them to a remote sector of the galaxy, far beyond the reaches of charted space. Eugene piloted their stealth craft through the swirling rings of a massive gas giant, debris pinging off the hull. There, Antares pointed, his crystalline appendage indicating a dark structure nestled within the planet's rings. Eugene guided the ship into a concealed docking bay. As the airlock hissed open, he and Antares led their small team into the abandoned Vilcari outpost. The air inside was stale, untouched for millennia. They moved through cavernous halls filled with technology beyond comprehension. Eugene ran his hand along a console, and it sprang to life, projecting a holographic display of the galaxy. "By the stars!" one of their team members gasped. "They've mapped every civilization, every potential threat." As they delved deeper into the outpost, Eugene felt a growing sense of dread. In a vast chamber, they discovered a repository of Vilcari knowledge. Ancient texts lined the walls, and in the center stood a device that pulsed with otherworldly energy. Eugene approached it cautiously, his enhanced senses picking up subtle vibrations in the air. As he touched the device, a flood of information surged through his mind. He staggered back, gasping. They can control the fundamental forces of the universe," he said, his voice shaking. "Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, they bend them to their will." Antares' crystalline form dimmed with shock. "No wonder they fear humanity's potential. If we ever reach that level—" Eugene nodded grimly. "We'd be a threat to their dominance." As they continued to explore, the full scope of the Vilcari's machinations became clear. They had orchestrated the rise and fall of countless civilizations, always maintaining their position at the top of the cosmic hierarchy. Back on their ship, Eugene and Antares pored over the data they had gathered. The implications were staggering. "Oh, we can't fight them head-on," Antares said, his voice heavy with the weight of their discovery. Eugene's eyes narrowed as he studied a schematic of Vilcari technology. "Maybe we don't have to. Look at this. Their power comes from harnessing a rare, unstable element. If we could get our hands on it, we could disrupt their control over the fundamental forces," Antares finished, his crystalline form brightening with hope. Eugene nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "We'll need a team. The best of the best." Days later, Eugene led a strike team to a hostile world where the rare element could be found. As their ship broke through the planet's atmosphere, Eugene saw the jagged landscape below, teeming with savage creatures. "Stay sharp," he commanded as they touched down. "We're not alone here." They battled their way across the harsh terrain, facing off against monstrous beasts with razor-sharp claws and venomous fangs. Eugene's enhanced strength and reflexes were pushed to their limits as he fought to keep his team alive. As they neared their objective, a new threat emerged. Vilcari forces, alerted to their presence, descended upon them in sleek, otherworldly craft. "They know we're here!" Eugene shouted, ducking behind a rocky outcropping as energy blasts scorched the ground around them. The air filled with the sound of weapons fire and the screams of the wounded. Eugene watched in horror as members of his team fell, cut down by the superior technology of the Vilcari. With a desperate surge, they fought their way to the cache of the rare element. Eugene scooped up as much as he could carry, the unstable material pulsing with barely contained energy in his hands. As they prepared to flee, a towering figure materialized before them. The Vilcari commander stood at least 9 feet tall, its form shifting and rippling as if made of living mercury. "Foolish human," it spoke, its voice resonating on a frequency that made Eugene's bones ache. "You cannot hope to stand against us." The commander raised a hand, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around it. Rocks rose from the ground, swirling in a deadly vortex. Eugene, thinking quickly, activated the unstable element in his hands. A wave of energy pulsed outward, creating a temporary disruption field. The commander staggered, its control over matter momentarily nullified. Eugene seized the opportunity, channeling all his strength into a single, devastating punch. His fist connected with the Vilcari's face, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, with a thunderous crack, the seemingly invincible being crumpled to the ground. "Run!" Eugene shouted to his remaining team members. They sprinted back to their ship, the sounds of pursuit growing closer with each step. As they broke atmosphere, Eugene looked back at the planet below, his heart heavy with the cost of their victory. They had obtained the element, but at a terrible price. "We've won the battle," Antares said, his voice somber. "But the war is just the beginning." Eugene nodded, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The Vilcari would come for them now, with all the force they could muster. But for the first time, humanity had a fighting chance. "Then we'd better start preparing," Eugene said, his voice filled with... Eugene's eyes scanned the holographic display. His face hardened as he absorbed the implications of their narrow escape from the Vilcari outpost. The silence in the command center was thick with tension. "We've stirred up a hornet's nest," Antares said, his crystalline form pulsing with a mix of fear and drive. Eugene nodded, his mind racing. "They'll come at us with everything they've got. We need to be ready." He paced the room, fingers drumming against his thigh. Suddenly he stopped, his eyes lighting up with an idea. "We can't face them alone. We need a team. The best fighters from across the galaxy." Antares tilted his head, considering. "I have contacts. I can reach out, but it won't be easy to convince them." "Leave that to me," Eugene said, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. Over the next few days, Eugene and Antares worked tirelessly. Antares sent out encrypted messages across subspace channels, while Eugene pored over tactical data and combat reports. Their efforts paid off. On a desolate moon orbiting a gas giant, ships began to arrive. Eugene stood at the entrance to their makeshift base, watching as each new recruit disembarked. Korath, the Andorian tactician, strode down the ramp of his sleek vessel. His antenna twitched as he surveyed his surroundings, ice-blue eyes sharp and calculating. "Korath," Eugene greeted him, extending a hand. "Your reputation precedes you." The Andorian clasped Eugene's forearm in a warrior's grip. "As does yours, human. I look forward to seeing if the stories are true." Next came Zora, the Klingon warrior. She stomped down her ship's ramp, her massive frame dwarfing Eugene. She sniffed the air, lips curling in a sneer. "This is your base?" she growled. "It smells of weakness." Eugene met her gaze unflinchingly. "Then let's make it smell of victory instead." As more recruits arrived, the tension in the air grew palpable. Species that had been at war for generations now found themselves standing side by side. Heated words were exchanged, hands strayed to weapons. Eugene watched it all, waiting for the right moment. When the arguments reached a fever pitch, he stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Enough!" he shouted. The assembled warriors fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "I know you have your differences, your grudges, your pride, but none of that matters now. The Vilcari are coming, and if we don't stand together, we all fall." He paced before them, meeting each gaze in turn. "You're here because you're the best, because together we have a chance to stop a threat that would enslave us all. So you can fight each other and die alone, or you can fight with me and give your people a future." The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then Zora stepped forward, her massive hand clamping down on Eugene's shoulder. "You speak well, human," she said, her voice a low rumble. "But can you fight as well as you talk?" Eugene grinned. "Why don't we find out?" The training began in earnest. Eugene pushed them to their limits and beyond. They ran drills in punishing gravity, practiced tactics in blinding sandstorms, and honed their skills in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Through it all, Eugene led from the front. He matched Zora blow for blow in the sparring ring, leaving them both bruised and bloodied but grinning with newfound respect. He spent long nights with Korath, poring over battle plans and devising strategies that left the Andorian shaking his head in begrudging admiration. As the days wore on, the team began to coalesce. Old hatreds gave way to wary respect, then to genuine camaraderie forged in shared struggle. But their progress was cut short when Antares burst into the training room, his crystalline form pulsing with urgent patterns. "Eugene," he called out, his voice tight with fear, "I found something. Something terrible." The team gathered around as Antares projected a holographic image of a massive structure unlike anything they'd ever seen. "It's a weapon," Antares explained, his voice grim, "capable of destroying entire star systems, and the Vilcari are planning to test it on the Tholian homeworld." A hush fell over the room as the implications sank in. Eugene's mind raced, calculating options, weighing risks. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Days, maybe less," Antares replied. Eugene nodded, his expression hardening. "Then we move now. Korath, I need infiltration plans for their shipyard. Zora, prep the assault team. The rest of you, gear up. We leave in an hour." As the team scattered to prepare, Eugene felt the weight of countless lives settling on his shoulders. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle to come. Their ship sliced through the void of space, a ghost in the night. As they approached the Vilcari shipyard, Eugene addressed his team one last time. "This is it," he said, his voice steady. "Everything we've trained for. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and the odds are stacked against us. But we have something they don't, each other. Now let's go make history." The hull of their ship rang with the sound of weapons being primed and armor being sealed. Eugene met each of their eyes in turn, seeing not aliens, but comrades, brothers and sisters in arms. With a nod to Korath, Eugene gave the order. "Breach in 3, 2, 1. The ship's airlock blew open, and they plunged into the heart of enemy territory. The acrid smell of burnt circuitry and plasma residue filled Eugene's nostrils as he surveyed the wreckage of the Vilcari shipyard. His team moved swiftly through the debris, gathering intel and securing vital data cores. "Eugene, you need to see this," Antares called out, his crystalline form pulsing with urgency. Eugene jogged over, careful to avoid the sharp metal fragments littering the floor. Antares projected a holographic display filled with encrypted transmissions and personnel files. "These aren't just military communiques," Eugene muttered, his eyes widening as he scanned the information. "These are messages to and from high-ranking officials in the Galactic Council." Antares nodded gravely. "It appears the Vilcari infiltration goes deeper than we ever imagined." Back at their remote outpost, Eugene paced the cramped command center. The rest of the team huddled around a tactical display, faces grim as they absorbed the implications of their discovery. "We can't trust anyone," Zora growled, her massive fist clenching. "How do we fight an enemy that wears the face of our allies?" Korath's antennae twitched as he considered the problem. "We draw them out, force them to reveal themselves." Eugene stopped pacing, a plan forming in his mind. "We give them something they can't resist, a weapon that could turn the tide of the war." "But we don't have such a weapon," Antares pointed out. "No," Eugene agreed, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "But they don't know that." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to craft their deception. They fabricated schematics, forged communications, and leaked just enough information to make their bait irresistible. As they prepared for the trap to spring, Eugene addressed his team. "This won't be easy. We'll be outnumbered and fighting an enemy that can change shape at will. Trust your instincts, watch each other's backs, and remember what we're fighting for." The assault on the facility was chaos incarnate. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Eugene's team breached the outer defenses. Zora charged forward, her battle cry echoing off the metal walls as she smashed through a squad of Vilcari soldiers. Korath's voice crackled over the comm. "Eugene, take the left corridor. We'll draw their fire to the main hall." Eugene nodded, sprinting down the indicated path. The sound of battle faded behind him as he pushed deeper into the facility. Suddenly, he found himself face to face with a figure he recognized, Admiral Thorne of the Galactic Council. "Stand down, Coleman," the Admiral ordered. "This is a restricted area." Eugene's enhanced senses picked up a subtle shift in the air around the Admiral. Without hesitation, he lunged forward, his fist connecting with the imposter's face. The Admiral's form rippled, revealing its true Vilcari nature. The shapeshifter lashed out with inhuman speed, its limbs elongating into razor-sharp tendrils. Eugene ducked and weaved, his augmented reflexes pushed to their limit. He felt a burning slash across his arm as one tendril found its mark. Gritting his teeth, he pressed forward, landing a series of punishing blows. Just as Eugene gained the upper hand, the Vilcari agent's eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "You're too late, human. The virus is already spreading through your precious network." Eugene's blood ran cold as he realized the true scope of the Vilcari plan. He slammed the shapeshifter against the wall, demanding answers. "How do we stop it?" The agent's laughter was cut short by the sound of an explosion rocking the facility. Eugene's comm crackled to life with Korath's voice. "Eugene, we're overrun. Fall back to the command center." With a final blow to incapacitate the Vilcari agent, Eugene sprinted towards the heart of the facility. He arrived to find Korath holding off a swarm of Vilcari soldiers. "Go!" Korath shouted, his tactical genius evident in the way he'd bottlenecked the enemy forces. "I'll hold them here." Eugene hesitated for a split second before nodding grimly. He and Zora pushed forward into the command center, where they found another Vilcari agent hunched over a console, its form shifting rapidly as it manipulated the controls. Zora roared a challenge, drawing the agent's attention. Eugene used the distraction to close the distance, engaging the shapeshifter in close combat. The Vilcari's limbs blurred with impossible speed, striking from multiple angles at once. Eugene felt his ribs crack under a particularly vicious blow, but he pushed through the pain. He managed to lock the shapeshifter in a hold, yelling to Zora, "Now!" Zora's massive form slammed into them both, momentarily disrupting the Vilcari's concentration. Eugene broke free, diving for the console. His fingers flew over the controls, uploading the counter-virus they'd prepared. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the facility's systems flickered, and a wave of energy pulsed outward. The Vilcari agent howled in frustration as its form destabilized, no longer able to maintain its shape-shifting abilities. Eugene sagged against the console, exhaustion and pain threatening to overwhelm him. Zora stood guard, her eyes scanning for any further threats. "We did it," Eugene breathed, allowing himself a moment of relief. But as he looked at the data streaming across the console, his heart sank. The Vilcari infiltration was far more extensive than they'd realized. This victory, hard-fought as it was only the beginning. Eugene pushed himself to his feet, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "Come on," he said to Zora. "We need to regroup with Antares. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." As they made their way out of the facility, Eugene's mind raced with the challenges that lay ahead. The Vilcari threat was not nearly finished, and now they had to confront an enemy that had wormed its way into the very heart of galactic civilization. Eugene Coleman stared at the holographic display, his eyes scanning the intricate web of data points and intercepted transmissions. Beside him, Antares pulsed with an intense blue glow, his crystalline form reflecting the urgency of their discovery. "There," Eugene said, pointing to a cluster of encrypted signals. "That's our target." Antares's voice hummed with anticipation. The Vilcari homeworld, hidden all this time. Eugene nodded, his heart made. Time to end this war once and for all. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Eugene assembled his strike force, briefing them in the cramped war room of their base. Zora towered over the others, her scarred face set in a fierce grin. "We fly into the heart of enemy territory," Eugene explained, his voice steady. "A cloaked fortress world, hidden in a dense nebula at the edge of the galaxy." Murmurs rippled through the assembled warriors. Eugene silenced them with a raised hand. "I won't lie to you. This mission is beyond dangerous, but it's our only chance to strike at the Vilcari's power base and end this war. As their ships entered the nebula, visibility dropped to near zero. Swirling clouds of cosmic dust and ionized gas enveloped them, playing havoc with their sensors. Suddenly alarms blared. "Incoming!" Zora shouted from her gunner's position. A swarm of Vilcari drones emerged from the nebula, their sleek forms barely visible in the cosmic haze. Energy beams lanced out, slamming into the lead ship's shields. "Evasive maneuvers!" Eugene ordered, his hands flying over the controls. "Zora, target the lead drone." Their ship rolled and dove, narrowly avoiding a barrage of enemy fire. Zora's cannons roared to life, tearing through the nearest drone. But for every drone they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Eugene's mind raced, calculating trajectories and attack patterns. "There!" he shouted, spotting a gap in the enemy formation. "All ships form up on me. We're going to punch through their lines." Eugene guided his ship into a steep dive, leading the strike force through a gauntlet of enemy fire. Shields flickered and hulls groaned under the assault, but they pressed on. As they emerged from the nebula, a massive energy barrier shimmered before them, encasing an entire planet. "That's it," Eugene breathed. "The Vilcari fortress world." He turned to his team, his eyes blazing with willpower. "Zora, you're with me. We're boarding one of those drones to hack its systems. The rest of you, keep the enemy occupied." Eugene and Zora donned their combat suits and launched themselves into space. Using their suit thrusters, they maneuvered towards the nearest drone, dodging debris and energy bolts. They landed on the drone's hull with a metallic thud. Eugene activated his plasma cutter, carving an opening into the drone's exterior. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a cramped corridor filled with pulsing alien tech. "Cover me," Eugene said, kneeling beside a data port. He plugged in his hacking device, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. Zora stood guard, her massive frame filling the corridor. The sound of her disruptor rifle discharging echoed through the drone as she fended off internal defense systems. "Got it," Eugene exclaimed. "Coordinates for the fortress world and... Wait, what's this?" His eyes widened as he scanned the data. "They've got a network of reactors powering that energy barrier. If we can overload them." Zora grinned, baring her sharp teeth. "We bring down their defenses." They fought their way back to their ship, transmitting the intel to the rest of the strike force. As they regrouped, Eugene laid out his plan. "We split into teams," he explained. "Hit all the reactors simultaneously, overload them, and that barrier comes down." The battle that followed was chaos incarnate. Eugene led his team across the planet's surface, fighting through waves of Vilcari defenders. The alien landscape was harsh and unforgiving, with toxic atmospheres and treacherous terrain. Eugene ducked behind a twisted metal structure as energy bolts sizzled past. He glanced at Antares, who was working furiously to hack the reactor systems. "How much longer?" Eugene shouted over the din of battle. Antares' crystalline form pulsed with effort. "Almost there!" A piercing whine filled the air as the reactor began to overload. Eugene grabbed Antares, pulling him away from the console. "Fall back," he ordered. "Move!" They sprinted for cover as the reactor exploded in a blinding flash of energy. Similar explosions dotted the horizon as the other teams completed their objectives. The massive energy barrier flickered and died, revealing the true scope of the Vilcari fortress. It was a colossal structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics, its twisted spires reaching into the sky. Eugene stared at the imposing citadel, his breath catching in his throat. This was it, the heart of the Vilcari Empire, and they were about to tear it down. He turned to his team, his voice filled with fierce pride. "Let's finish this." They charged towards the fortress, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them inside. Eugene Coleman stood before the assembled leaders of the galactic races, his face etched with the weariness of countless battles. The Grand Hall, once a symbol of Vilcari dominance, now served as a testament to their defeat. Alien dignitaries filled the room, their eyes fixed on the human who had led the charge against their common enemy. "We've won the war," Eugene began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "But now we face an even greater challenge, building a lasting peace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A Xanthari ambassador, his tentacles twitching with agitation, spoke up. "And why should we trust humanity to lead this new era? Your weapons, your tactics, they're too dangerous to be left unchecked." Eugene nodded, acknowledging the concern. "I understand your fears, but I assure you, our goal is not dominance, but cooperation." As he continued to address the assembly, Eugene noticed a group of human officials in the back, their faces twisted with barely concealed contempt. Admiral Kravitz, a decorated war hero, locked eyes with Eugene and shook his head in disapproval. Days later, Eugene sat in his office, poring over reports of unrest across newly liberated worlds. A knock at the door interrupted his concentration. "Enter," he called out. Kravitz strode in, his military uniform impeccable, a stark contrast to Eugene's disheveled appearance. "Coleman, we need to talk about our next move." Eugene leaned back in his chair, eyeing the Admiral warily. "What did you have in mind?" Kravitz's voice took on a zealous edge. "We have the power to reshape the galaxy in our image. The other races are weak, divided. We should strike now, establish human dominance once and for all." Eugene stood up, his fists clenched. "Absolutely not. We didn't fight this war just to become the new oppressors." "You're a fool, Coleman," Kravitz spat. "Your weakness will be our downfall." As Kravitz stormed out, Eugene sank back into his chair, the weight of leadership pressing down on him. Weeks passed, and reports of attacks on Allied outposts began to flood in. Eugene stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays of the affected sectors. "It's Kravitz," Antares said, his crystalline form pulsing with anger. "He's rallied a significant force of extremists to his cause." Eugene's expression resolute as he studied the tactical readouts. "We can't let this continue. Prepare a strike team. We're going to end this." The planet's surface was a hellscape of twisted metal and scorched earth, remnants of the recent war. Eugene's dropship touched down amidst the chaos of battle, energy weapons lighting up the sky. As Eugene led his team through the wreckage, the sounds of combat grew louder. They rounded a corner to find Kravitz's forces entrenched behind makeshift barricades. "Push forward!" Eugene shouted, diving for cover as plasma bolts sizzled overhead. The battle raged on, neither side gaining a clear advantage. Suddenly, a horrific scream cut through the din. Eugene peered over his cover to see one of Kravitz's soldiers convulsing, his body twisting and bulging in impossible ways. "What the hell?" Eugene whispered, watching in horror as the soldier's form continued to warp and grow. Kravitz's voice boomed across the battlefield. "Behold the future of humanity, Coleman, no longer bound by the limits of our fragile bodies." More screams erupted as other soldiers began to transform, their bodies mutating into monstrous forms. Eugene's team fell back, overwhelmed by the onslaught of these new abominations. As Eugene retreated, a massive figure landed in front of him, its inhuman eyes gleaming with recognition. His heart sank as he realized who it was. "Zora," he gasped, taking in the twisted form of his once loyal comrade. The creature that had been Zora let out a bone-chilling roar and charged. Eugene's combat training took over as he ducked and weaved, narrowly avoiding her deadly strikes. "Zora, please," he pleaded, searching for any sign of his friend in those alien eyes. "This isn't you!" But there was no hint of recognition, no trace of the warrior he had fought alongside for so long. With a heavy heart, Eugene realized what he had to do. In a lightning-fast move, he slipped past Zora's guard and plunged his vibroblade into her chest. The monstrous form shuddered and collapsed. As Zora's life ebbed away, Eugene cradled her head, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." The battle ended, but the cost was too high. Eugene stood among the fallen, his voice hollow as he gave the order to stand down. In the days that followed, Eugene found himself unable to shake the weight of his actions. He stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, his decision made. "I hereby relinquish my position," he announced, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "The future of our galaxy should be decided by all, not by one man or one race." As the council chamber erupted into discussion, Eugene slipped away. He made his way to the spaceport, where a small ship awaited. Antares stood by the boarding ramp, his crystalline form dim with sadness. "Are you sure about this, Eugene?" Eugene nodded, his eyes distant. "It's for the best. The galaxy needs to heal, to find its own way forward. And I need to find my own path." With a final handshake, Eugene boarded the ship. As it lifted off, carrying him towards the vast unknown of space, he gazed out at the stars, wondering what the future held for the galaxy he had fought so hard to save.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.